Welcome to Moments with Marianne. This is your host, Marianne Pastana, and we're here today with special guest, David Mendoza III, who's here to share with us his new books, Unleashed Redemption, a canine handler's story of hope and healing, and the biblical adventures of Floppy and Hoppy. So how can a canine handler's journey of resilience, service, and redemption inspire us to find purpose even in life's toughest moments? Well, today's guest is here to share with us just that. David Mendoza III is the founder and CEO of Books for His Glory Publishing, and he is a dedicated servant leader with a deep commitment to faith, service, and storytelling. A retired federal law enforcement officer with over 30 years of service, he's also a Desert Storm Marine Corps veteran. Holding a seminary degree in biblical studies, David has served as a law enforcement chaplain, peer support member, and veteran support program volunteer. Now a Christian minister and former pastor, David shares his faith through ministry and writing. He's the author of several children's books. A devoted husband and father, David and his wife Janie are actively involved in their church and serve in adult and children ministry. So welcome to the show, David Mendoza III.
Thank you for having me on your show.
Well, what an honor it is to have you here and to talk about your books. I was so touched by your book, Unleashed Redemption. Can you share with us what inspired you to write that?
Yes, Marianne. This book was birthed out of course, my love for God and my love for people. As you know, I was in law enforcement over 25 years, and I was also a U.S. Marine. I'm a Desert Storm veteran. And, during my time in law enforcement, I was a canine handler. But in addition to that, I was also a chaplain and a peer support member. So through that, I learned to love people, and not only love people, but honestly to help them in their time of need. So I wanted to put out a book. I wanted to write a book and publish it and share it with people. Not only my experiences about, my career in law enforcement or in the military, but my experience with people, my experience of helping them. I learned that a lot of times it's not what you tell people. It's not about you preaching to people per se, but it's more about just being there for them. And that will make a world of difference. So that's what I wanted to do with this book, just kind of highlight and give people hope and encourage them, during their time of need, because we all go through a hard time, as you know. I've heard before where we're either, coming out of a problem, or should I say, coming into a problem, in a problem, or coming out of a problem, or a certain situation where a lot of times it seems like there's no way out. There's no way, there's no hope. And a lot of times it feels like there's no one there, or that, we're alone in this, challenge or conflict. So I hope that my book will inspire people. I hope that my book will help people. And it's not just about the book, but what's inside it, and what I've shared through my experiences, through my challenges in life, and how honestly God has helped me through that, and how the scriptures have helped me. Because a lot of times, as I mentioned, I am a veteran. I do suffer from PTSD and anxiety, and the VA is very good. There's some very good resiliency programs. But honestly, a lot of times I found out that a lot of these programs, and it's in the actual veteran, right? Um, it's however whatever direction they want to take it. So it's up to the veteran. Uh, but a lot of times I've felt, for me personally, that a lot of these programs were like a band-aid, and I wanted to experience, or I wanted to get to the root of the problem. And I found out that through scriptures and just seeking God, that addressed the root of the problem, and that has really helped me to the point where I started helping others out through my own challenges.
How has your experience as a canine handler helped shape your journey of healing and hope?
Okay, so that is a very good question, because if you notice in my book, I used a lot of the training aspect of it, the vocabulary behind the training, and I used them as metaphors. So through that, like I mentioned, I was a dog handler before I was a chaplain and before I was a peer support. And honestly, there's a chapter in my book where actually it's chapter 3. It's called Highway 44, and that's one of my favorite chapters because that was my crossroads. That's where I came, and honestly, because I had a calling in my life that had been honestly running away from it. I was isolated, even though I was a law enforcement officer, and even though it looked like everything seemed to be okay on the outside. In the inside, I'll be honest with you, I was a mess, and I was in total darkness. Yes, I wore the badge. Yes, I did what I had to do to the best of my ability. I loved the job. I loved my partner, K9 Rudy. I loved him, and we loved what we did. But there was something inside me that was missing. There was something, like I mentioned, suffered from PTSD, and a lot of time nobody knew about it. I hid it. I learned, or at least I thought I learned to hide it very well. During that time, that calling kept coming, and it was not until that Highway 44 experience and I call it my Highway 44 experience because that was my crossroads. One day I was going to work, I'll be honest with you, when they say, they call it a calling, it is a calling. I heard God's voice. I had been hearing God's voice to the point where, honestly, I got involved in alcohol more than I cared to even, confess nowadays, but I did. And of course, it was off duty, but it started affecting everything. Started affecting my marriage, started affecting honestly, even my work. At my workplace, it started affecting me mentally, uh, to the point where, I mean, that was my escape. That's where I went to hide. And during that time, I would hear God's voice, and I was running away from his voice. I was running away from the calling. I did not want to hear him. The words that I would hear was, "This is not you. This is not who I created you to be." Those were the words that I would hear. And I honestly, I ran away from it. But like anything else, I came to a wall, and that was my crossroads, and I, at that point, I felt I had nowhere to turn. My marriage, we're about to get divorced. I'll be honest with you. And I wrote it in my book. You'll find it. I went through a period where I got in trouble with the law. Me being a law enforcement, I got in trouble with the law. And I still drank after that. I still did what I was doing, but I learned, I want to say I learned my lesson, but honestly, it was just God allowing that to happen to where I came to the crossroads. And it's a very heartfelt story because the way it happened was I was on my way to work, and I just had enough. I'll be honest with you, uh, Marianne. I just had enough of life, and I was at that point where I just pulled over, my dog in the back. I was going to on my way to work early, so I just pulled over on Highway 44. I put my emergencies on, and I said, "Okay, I know you're real. I know you can hear me because my grandma has taught me that since I was little, and I know I've felt you before, so I know you're real, God." But and I was honest with him. I just the way you hear me, that's the way I was talking to him. And I said, "I do not understand what Christianity is all about, and I don't understand what church is all about. But you know what? If you can use this mess, here I am." And at that moment, I want to say, I heard just a choir of angels singing and the sky opening up. I honestly, it's like they say, I didn't see none of that, but I tell you what, there was a heaviness that was lifted from me. At that moment, I started crying uncontrollably. I mean, but it was a good cry, and I'm not ashamed to say it. It was a good cry to the point where when I talk about this, I tell people, I think even my dog was born again that day because, that's how extreme it was. That when that happened, and I confessed that, my dog started licking the partition. and he even started wimping, like making sure I was okay. And so that's the beautiful. I love to share that story because that's how my conversion came. That's how my calling came. It was in the road. It was not in a church. It was not in before a priest or a rabbi or a pastor. It was just me, God, and my dog on the side of the road. And so that's where everything came to, my crossroad came. And from that point on, it took some time. It took some time of me learning and me, it's like anything when you start learning how to walk. You don't run before you can start crawling as a baby. And it was the same thing. It was just, but you know what? There was like, as I mentioned earlier, there was a heaviness that was lifted off. And I took one day at a time. But at that point, I saw that light at the end of the tunnel. Yes, my life was still the same. My situation was still the same on the outside, but on the inside, something genuine had changed.
What a great just story of what you've gone through. I mean, my goodness. And it has me thinking there are so many veterans and police officers and first responders who go through really difficult situations because there's so much trauma, there's so much going on. It's like, how do they find a sense of relief and to be in that moment that you were in? I mean, what a blessing that was.
Yes, Marianne. You mentioned it, right? Uh, Officers, and honestly, yes, they deal with it in an extreme basis because they face it day in and day out. All agencies, veterans, even dispatchers, firemen, doctors, even, especially in the ER, they go through this, and day in and day out, we put our work hat, as we call it. We put our work hat, and we put that wall. But that wall, we're hurting ourselves because where does it go? What's the outlet? If you don't have an outlet, like I mentioned, my outlet before was alcohol. That's where I would go, and sadly, that's where a lot of my fellow officers and agents turn to. And this is not about religion. This is not about me trying to convert anybody. Honestly, this is just hey, this is my story, and this is what helped me out. And you know what? I'm sure will help you out because I'm not anyone special in myself. So that anxiety, that PTSD, that darkness, and before I couldn't even mention the word PTSD. I couldn't, and honestly, I mean, just what a change. Before, I just wanted to stay in my room, in a dark room, not talking to anybody, not socializing, nothing, and now I'm out there. What a change, and what a testament from God, for God, that wow. That's why we named my publishing company Books for His Glory, because I wanted to highlight that. I wanted to people to know that what, it's not about me. It's, man, when I make it about Him, He makes it about you, about people, because He gave me this love for people, that wow, it wasn't there before. And I'll be honest with you, because I was too concentrated. I would, too much on myself. I was too focused on myself, my own needs, that I didn't see that before. That there is not just about me, And one of the things that I did learn is that honestly, when I make it about other people, wow, man, and it's a genuine care, it's a genuine, heartfelt love for others that He gives you, and wow, He takes care of you as you take care of other people. Now, isn't that amazing?
That is definitely amazing, but you hear about that. I've heard about this where if you are focused on other people, it helps bring you out of what you're stuck in. That
Yes,
service, being in that service.
yes, exactly. I decided, hey, let's do something. Yes, I'm retired, but it's not over. And actually, that was another hurdle that I had to, overcome. My identity, right? Now that I don't have that badge and gun, who am I? Well, you know, because that happens, and it happens to a lot of retirees, where all, year after year, they identify themselves through that badge and that gun, or that uniform. And now what? Well, the good thing is I learned not to identify myself through that, but honestly, through Christ. And when I purposely built a life outside of my agency. Not that I love my agency. I love, my fellow agents. I love working there. But you know what? When I built that life outside of my work and I learned to do that, when it was time for me to retire, honestly, it was not that difficult as it could have been because I had a life outside of that. Now I do miss it. I miss my friends and my coworkers, but it was that much easier because I understood that now I have an additional purpose, a separate purpose. And that was that was a chapter that closed, but guess what? It's not over. As a matter of fact, it's a new beginning. And so this is where we're at.
What messages do you want our listeners and readers to take away from Unleashed Redemption?
That there is hope, that even at the darkest time, I don't care how dark it might seem for them, what I want them to take away from this book and from honestly my testament is that they're not alone, that there is help, and there is, and if they just ask, it might not be a verbal, outspoken asking, but a soft whisper, and God will hear them, and He will send someone somewhere somehow. I promise you, because that's what He did for me. That there is hope, not to give up.
What a just a phenomenal story. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. I know
Yes.
that you have these amazing children's books as well. Can you share those with us?
Yes, sure. So actually, that's the way I got started as an author, right? My first book that we published, and again through our publishing company, which is Books for His Glory, was the Biblical Adventures of Floppy and Hoppy. So that book is my first book that I actually wrote, and honestly, my wife's the one that encouraged me to be an author because in my mind, nowhere, no how was I ever author, but God had other plans, and He used my wife. And so I used to tell my boys bedtime stories when they were growing up. I got two boys, and I would tell them bedtime stories, and I would relate those stories to problems or issues that they would have, that they would face. For example, bullying or any other type of issue like that. I came up with two characters, Marianne. They were Floppy and Hoppy, two little bunny brothers, and with those two characters, mixed with scripture, I would bring a story that they can relate to the point where they didn't even know I was giving them a devotion. So my wife would always tell me and encourage me, you should write a book on that. And again, I said, no, me write a book? Never. But never say never. Um, One day after I had retired. Oh yeah, let me rewind a little bit more. My wife had told me, well, if you're not going to write a book, at least write down notes. Let's keep notes on those stories, and so we can write. Share with others because you need to share with others. And honestly, when I saw that, yes, okay, write a book is later on. I would still tell stories to my little one. We caught my older son. He's 18 now. We caught him eavesdropping, wanting to listen to these stories. That's how good. They enjoyed them. So through that, one day, just I was in prayer, and honestly, I heard him. I heard God's voice saying, "It's time." And I'm like, and me playing around, I'm a joker, and I go, okay, time for what, Lord? Get another job? And he said, no, no, you know exactly what I'm talking about. So I knew exactly what he was putting in my heart, and so I started writing. And one of the things that I had always been a writer, but I had never considered myself a writer. I kept journals and when I was in the military, in the Marine Corps, I kept journals throughout my law enforcement career, and I've always loved writing. I never considered myself an author, but I did write this book in 3 days, The Biblical Adventures of Floppy and Hoppy. And one of the most exciting thing about this book is that it's all our books are first of all faith-based, and they are a family effort. My wife has a part in it, my older son has a part in it, and my younger son. Now, the way my younger son has a part in it is, I'm proud to say, he's the illustrator behind The Biblical Adventures of Floppy and Hoppy, to the point where he got an award. He got an award for that book. We just attended the South Texas AuthorCon convention, and it was a blessing. Unexpectedly, he got an award for that book for the Uprising, the first award ever for the Uprising Illustrator Award. So we are very proud of that. He's also gotten another award, Reader's Favorite 5-star award. So that book, I never thought it was going to do that well, just because it is bedtime devotions for children, and there's like 5-6 stories in it. But over and over, people have come to me and tell me that is such a wonderful book. It's so genuine, and I'm like, you know what? I just thank God that it can be a blessing to others, and that's what my son says. He goes, Dad, I'm so glad other children are reading those, the Floppy and Hoppy stories. So that's the story behind that, Marianne.
What a great story to have an illustrator that is your son, and the book is fabulous. So well done, so well put together. My goodness, David, I mean, you're such an inspiration. Where can our listeners and readers connect with you and be part of your community and learn more about your work?
Yes, they can go to my website. It's www.booksforhisglory.com. Again, that's www.booksforhisglory.com. And in there, I have all my social media outlets, Facebook, TikTok, and others. They can go through there, and they can connect with me through there. They also have my email through there. If they want to contact me for any reason, or just chat with me or whatever, they could do that through there.
Well, David, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show with us here today.
Thank you, Marianne, for having me. This was such a blessing, I tell you.
Well, thank you, David. It's been such an honor to spend this time with you and to talk about your new books, Unleashed Redemption, a canine handler's story of hope and healing, and your children's book, The Biblical Adventures of Floppy and Hoppy. David's books are available at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and all indie retailers. And remember, support our indie bookstores. If you don't see it on the shelf, just ask for them to order it. And of course, you can purchase this book directly from the publisher, booksforhisglory.com. Well, we're at the end of our time today. I'd like to thank everyone for tuning in. You've been listening to Moments with Marianne, where we make every moment count.
In a single moment, your life can change. Moments with Marianne is a transformative hour that covers an endless array of topics with the best of the best. Her guests are leaders in their fields, ranging from inspirational authors, top industry leaders, and business and spiritual entrepreneurs. Each guest is gifted and a true visionary, a recognized leader in her own work, and while teaching others to develop, refocus, and grow, Marianne will bring the best guest and sometimes a special surprise. Don't miss this. You never know just which moment will change your life forever. Make sure to tune in and visit momentswithmarianne.com for more information.